Hello and welcome to Shay Spills podcast, and this is the second episode of Time Travel's episode series I have started. Now this month's history lesson is on the 6 wives of King Henry VIII. Now I ain't a fan of the man, of himself, but he's also not one of my favourite kings either of England in the history, but this is all about his 6 wives he married during the years, so let's get into it. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. King Henry VIII ruled England for 36 years between 1509 to 1547. Henry is best known for his 6 wives and several mistresses he kept on the side. Now, the monarch's desperate quest for political unofficial of a healthy male heir drove him to the null of 2 marriages and to have 2 wives beheaded. And we're going to meet all 6 wives, with the first one following is Catherine of Aragon. Catherine of Aragon. In 1509, 6 weeks into King Henry's region of the king, 6 weeks later he married Catherine of Aragon, daughter of King Ferdinand and the Queen of Isabella of Spain, and the widow of his older brother Arthur, who died from a sweating sickness which Catherine also had and survived at the age of 16. She was born in 16th of December in 1485. She studied canon, civil law, classical literature, genealogy, heraldry, history, philosophy, religion, and theology. She is quite religious and upbringing and developed her Roman Catholic faith that would play a major role in later life. She spoke and wrote in Spanish, Latin, and spoke French and Greek. She was also taught domestic skills such as cooking, dancing, drawing, embroidery, good manners, lace making, music, needlepoint, and so on. Those days they were quite essential for a young lady to have. Of multiple pregnancies and several births, the only child to survive from Henry and Catherine's daughter was Mary, born in February in 1516, also known as the Bloody Mary, by her Protestant opponents. Catherine remained in Henry's side for 23 years and is even thought to be the only woman the king ever truly loved. Henry viewed her as a model wife in every respect bar one: her failure to give him a son. By 1520s, Henry had developed a fondness for Anne Boleyn, another lady in waiting to the Queen, and eventually sought the Pope's approval for an annulment. When the Pope refused Henry's request, the king divorced Catherine against the will of the Roman Catholic Church and then established the Church of England. Catherine died in Kinbolton Castle as a princess, not a queen, on January 7th in 1536, aged 50. And that is the first Queen of England. Oh, not England, Queen of Henry. Anne Boleyn was born in July between either 1501 to 1507. Historians are unsure of her official birth year because papers back then didn't stay very long, and possibly it was lost. Anne and her sister Mary spent their childhood in France. Mary and Anne returned to England sometime between 1520. Her academic education was limited, but her family did eventually get her to learn and educate in genealogy, grammar, history, reading, spelling and writing. She also developed domestic skills such as dancing, embroidery, good manners, house management, music, needlework and singing. But she also learned games such as cards, chess and dice. But she was also taught archery, falconry, horseback riding and hunting. Henry and Anne wed in January of 1533. Anne gave birth to their first child, Elizabeth, in September that very year. Henry lost interest into Anne and he took a new mistress. Anne was enraged. On one occasion, her sister-in-law, Lady Rochford, was banished from the court when she and Anne had plotted to remove the unnamed mistress from the court. Despite the end of the relationship, Henry accused her for adultery and treason, and a marriage was annulled. On May 19 in 1536, Anne was beheaded for her alleged crimes. We are unsure of her age of her death is estimated between 28 years old to 35. And that was poor Anne Boleyn, the shortest life of their marriage. Jane Seymour is the third wife. She was born in 1508. Jane was not as highly educated as Henry's first and second wives, Catherine and Anne. She could also read and write a little, but was much better at needlework and house management, which was considered more necessary for women back then. Her needlework was reportedly beautiful and elaborate. Some of this survived until late 1652, which was recorded to be given to the Seymour family. Jane became a maid of honour in 1532 to Queen Catherine, but as have served her as early as 1527 and went to serve Queen Anne with her sister Elizabeth. On October 12th in 1537, Jane gave birth to an Edward VI, I don't know what that means in Roman numbers, I do apologise, and died from complications of the birth several weeks later on the 24th of October in 1537, aged 29. After her death, Henry wore black for the next 3 months. 2 years later on, he married his fourth wife. When Henry died in 1547, he was buried beside her on his request in the grave he made for her. Fourth wife is Anne of Cleves. Anne was born in 1515 on either the 22nd of September or probably the 28th of June. They clearly didn't have the dates right or recorded them very well back then. She was born in Dusseldorf in Germany. Henry, as chief minister, suggested he seek a European alliance and once marry one of the sisters, Anne or Amelia of Germany, Duke of Cleves. Henry requested the women's portraits and found Anne to be more flattering of the two. When Anne arrived in England on January 1st in 1540, Henry was shocked that she was not looking like anything in the portrait he saw. Henry tried to stop the arrangement, but it was gotten so far they married on January 6th in 1540. Anne was so-called the ugly wife and accepted a divorce and a generous settlement, including Richmond Palace and Hever Castle. 6 months later, Anne lived in peace, King's sister, until her death on the 16th of July in 1557, either aged 41 or 42, in Chelsea Manor, England. She was most likely passed away from cancer then. Number 5 is Catherine Howard, born in 1523, Lambridge, London. Her father's sister was Elizabeth Howard and was the mother of Anne Boleyn. She has more blood than related to Jane Seymour as well. So Jane was her first cousin. Catherine was also the youngest wife of Henry. As a result of Dowager Duchess' lack of discipline, Catherine became influenced by older girls who allowed men sleeping in their areas at night for entertainment. The girls were entertained with food, wine, and gifts stolen from the kitchens. Catherine was not as well as educated as the other wives, although her own ability to read and write was impressive enough at the time. Catherine also had been described as vivacious, giggly and brisk, but not very scholarly or devout. She displayed great interest in her dance lessons, but often was distracted during them and made jokes. She was also had a nurturing side of her for animals, particularly the dogs. Henry married a young 17-year-old Catherine, a lady-in-waiting for Anne of Cleves, in July of 1540. But this time he had become overweight and unable to walk. It's said to be delighted with his rambunctious new wife. Henry showered Catherine with gifts and called her the rose without a thorn. How romantic. Catherine also had been involved during her marriage to the king of Henry's favourite male courtier, Thomas Culper, a young man who had succeeded in the Queen's affections, apparently. People claimed to have witnessed her earlier sexual behaviour while she was still a ward of Bet reportedly contacted her for favours in return of their silence. Oh, no. And some of the blackmailers also had been appointed to be her royal household. How cheeky. With enough evidence she had been less immoral to the marriage, Catherine was executed for her adultery and treason on the Tower of Green in February 13th in 1542, either the age of 18 to 19 years old. So that was really unfortunate. The final wife is Catherine Parr. Catherine Parr was born in 1512, Blackfriars, London, England. Catherine's initial education was similar to the other well-born women, but she developed a passion for learning, which continued throughout her life. She was fluent in French, Latin, and Italian, and began learning Spanish after becoming queen. In 1529, when she was 17, Catherine married Sir Edward Burr, her first husband. He had bad health in his 20s and unfortunately passed away. She then married a second man before marrying King Henry, which was her third husband. She was the first queen of England, also to be the Queen of Ireland, when she married Henry in July 1543. Following Henry's adoption of the King of Ireland, she managed to avoid a fate of predecessors, bringing stability and peace to the court, while serving a kind and caring stepmother to Henry's children. She also persuaded Henry to restore his daughters Mary and Elizabeth to the order of succession, and acted as regent when Henry went to war with France. Catherine died in 1548, a year after Henry's passing. Parr's funeral was the first Protestant funeral in England, Scotland, or in Ireland to be held in English. And that is all the 6 queens. Now, before we go and end the episode, you're probably wondering, why did I pick these 6 wives, precisely these 6 women, to be the second episode of Time Travels? And the one reason is Six, the musical. Now, if you haven't heard Six, the musical, it is a modern retelling of the lives of the 6 wives of Henry into a pop concert, as the wives take their turns singing and telling their story to see who suffered the most due to Henry, and would therefore become the group's lead singer, shall I say. I was supposed to see it in Dublin when the tour was coming. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it's been postponed twice. I was supposed to see it last April for my birthday, and slash Christmas present, and then it got postponed to September, and unfortunately it's still postponed to later this year in 2021. So I will eventually get to see it one day, eventually. Anyway, I want to say thank you so much for listening to the episode. Please like, review, and share the podcast to your family and friends. I am also now streaming on Twitch, playing Call of Duty's Warzone and Fortnite at twitch.tv/Shalano. If you ever want to watch me live, stay safe and mind yourselves, and thank you for listening. See you guys later.